and we're now going to do the card exercise to look at who you are as a team. And the card exercise works like this. It's got 4 colour cards.
Okay.
And what I'm going to ask you to do is to take from a stack of the green 3 cards from the green, 3 from the blue, 3 from the red, and 3 from the yellow, giving you a total of 12 cards. So if we start there, and then I'll give you the next set of instructions. So I can just hand these to you, Laura.
Shall I give you those to start with?
That's right.
Okay. So we just take 3.
3 from each colour, please.
Okay. Doesn't matter which ones we take?
No, please take them completely randomly.
Okie dokie. Thank you. Oh gosh, these guys are faster than me. Cool.
Okay, so you've all got 12 cards. You're now going to turn them around on the grey side, and you're going to read the statements on the grey side, and you're going to keep the ones that belong to you, i.e. they describe a characteristic that you have. So in my case, for instance, it says here, I have a lot of creative ideas. I believe I do, so I'm going to keep that card. Other people can easily tell when I'm excited about something, I'm going to keep that card. Sometimes I get lost in the detail and miss the big picture. That's less me, so I'm going to put that in my other hand. So you're going to have one hand which has got the cards that belong to you, and another hand which are the ones you think, I can't really recognise that as much in myself. So you start by doing that.
What about for ones you're not sure?
Yeah, so you're going to just ask yourself, is this something I can see in myself quite often? And then you're going to keep that. And if it's something that you think that's really, really rare, then you can put that aside to the other hand, which is less you. Okay, so you've got a stack that's yours, you've got a stack that's yours. Okay.
Start going.
So for the stack that's not you, so if you want to, you can put the one that is you down on the floor and just put that to the side. So those are cards that you recognise in yourself. Now you have cards in front of you that you don't recognise so much in yourself. Is there someone else in the team that card could belong to? If you know team members well, then you can go and hand them, but don't just hand them and say, here you go. But say, I see you doing this, so I'm going to hand you this card. So give an explanation for why you are handing a card to someone.
Okay. I'm going to hand this one to you, Deb. Do you think this is something?
Yes.
Detailed tasks? Okay.
Yes, Debs, can I offer you that?
Yes,
That's
very me.
Don't like being late
Don't
at
like
all.
being late.
In fact, just because I've never seen you be late for
I'm
anything.
being
No.
so diplomatic. Anyone so diplomatic? They avoid taking a stance?
Not me.
What's so much
Dan, Seal, I've got one for you. You generally approach tasks in an organised way.
That's very encouraging. Take
Seem
that
to always
feedback.
be on the ball.
Dan, I'm going to offer you that.
I'm realistic and practical by nature.
Every conversation we have, I tend to get the impression you're pretty practical
Try
about
to,
it.
yeah.
I appreciate that. I think
take
I'm
that one.
I
I do
only do
listen
that
to
more.
others.
Yeah.
Alright, we'll use this one.
Yeah.
I tend to be
I
naturally
think I may have
trusting.
Oh
one
yeah,
myself.
it's probably too trusting.
There are many meetings, of course. I take my time to think before
I'm not
speaking.
afraid
in
of
a group.
conflict.
Yeah?
Not that you
Yeah,
spend
that
too long,
would
but
be me.
it's like when you do
That
choose to
one's
speak,
for you.
you've taken several
Anyone
moments to kind of consider your points before you.
Willing to admit they
Yeah, that's
lack
fair.
planning?
Yeah, I'll fess up to that one. Yeah. Debs, I've got one for you. Your desire for precision and accuracy can become obsessive. You and your quotation marks.
I'll get to that.
And that probably complements it when working on a task.
I'm
Kind of
turning blue.
meticulous.
Sam,
Okay.
Particulars?
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much of a traditionalist when you think that something could change.
No.
Let's see if I have. Well, this one I wasn't sure. I'm usually persuasive and convincing in a group.
Theoretically.
I think you are.
Yeah.
Something I think. Those are the ones. It's one that we can't seem to give away.
Yeah, so if there are any cards that you feel doesn't belong to any in the group, they can go back to me.
Okay.
I also will say something about the group. I can be so diplomatic that I'll avoid taking a stance. That can then be something that the group doesn't do so much.
So
And
those
these ones are also coming back.
those are
Put
coming
these
back.
ones aside. These are coming back.
Well, I have one quick one for you. I think you relate to. I prefer to talk to people rather than communicate in writing.
Absolutely. That's funny because I was going to give you the opposite one. Go back.
All right. So what you've now got is a stack of cards. If you take the ones from before, you have a whole deck of cards. Part of those are self-selected, and part of those have been given to you by others. So what I'd like you to do now is just to colour code them initially. So basically put them in red, exactly like Laura's done there.
Wow.
Alright. Okay, so we put them in colour order. What are you noticing? Debs, what are you
Well,
noticing
yeah,
about
yellow
yours?
is disappearing. I seem
Yeah.
to have a lot more blue.
Yeah, seems to have gone more the blue way. Dan, for you?
Clear preference for red. Lack of yellow, I'm noticing.
Mm.
For myself, relatively balanced, but a little more blue than anything else. Surprisingly less red than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I picked up quite a bit of yellow and lost a lot of blue as well.
I noticed that I have all 4 colours,
And you notice you have
which
all
is
four.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was interesting the cards that were given to me. There was some other green.
Some
green
green
that were
cards
given to
that
me.
were given to you, so you're noticing something that you
Mm.
hadn't picked up yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an important point is that there is no value judgment on any of these 4 colours. They're all equally valuable in a team and in yourself. And what about the green then, Laura? You said you'd got some people giving you some green. What would you say about the green in terms of what it brings to a team?
Well, looking at the word that's there, so people focus is part of it, but also inspiration driven and introverted. I think what it brings to the team is that we don't work in isolation, so I
Mhm.
have to work with other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the card
Yeah.
that I've got is around working with people.
Yeah. And how does it support you in the role?
So my role, every day I'm working with people, externally and also the internal team who support me.
Yeah.
In order to be able to do
Yeah.
what I do.
Yeah. So it's really very much working with other people, listening, as you say. And,
Yeah. listening.
and being flexible around that. Yeah. So the red then, Dan?
Yes, the red, I had a clear preference. I think most of my red was actually given to me as well,
Uh-huh.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I think what it is that to manage my part of new business, it takes me some concentrated effort to make sure that I'm structured.
Yeah.
And that I'm looking to be logical in the way that we convey information,
Yeah.
and purposeful with it.
Yeah.
I think that works very well, in fact, with Laura's role.
With Laura's role.
Yeah,
Suppose
we
I'm
kind of
looking at
both.
competitive as well, you're being in business development, it makes
Yes.
quite a lot of sense.
Yeah, certainly
Yeah.
trying to achieve something when
Yeah.
opening conversation.
So what you'll notice in your hand is that you're not just one thing, but you may have a preference for one of these, and it may very well be role dependent as well, so what you've all spoken about. So what we're going to do now is going to go into a little bit more detail with that. So I'm going to ask you again to look at the grey side of the cards, and I'm going to get you to pick out one of these cards that you would really say that is a strength of mine, and one you'd be willing to share with the team. So you're going to pick one card out that's a strength, and then you're going to pick a second card, which is one which is also a strength, but a strength that you'd be willing to admit that sometimes you do too much of. So in my case, I took a card earlier on that said I'm a creative, but there are times when I can get too creative for my own good in terms of what's possible, so that could be a card that I might take to share with the team. But really this is for you to choose one strength and a second card which is something that you'd be willing to admit that you sometimes do too much of. When you have the 2 cards, then just let me know. It looks like you've got the 2 cards.
Yeah.
You can put the other cards just down again. So just working with the 2 cards now. Alright, so we're going to start with the strength card. So Laura, you've got
So mine says, I often step forward and take the initiative in a group.
and I'm going to ask you to look at the other side, and the first word says
Takes charge.
takes charge. So I'm going to ask you to go and stand on the mat and takes charge.
Okay.
And instead of you don't have to read your sentence now, you just have to go and look at the opposite side of the strength card and just go and stand on where that is.
Oh, you're next
So
to
if you
me.
need any help. Alright. Okay, so you're all standing on what we call equality now, which is the quality to which this sentence belongs. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is to read it out, and I'm just going to ask you how it supports you. So first steps, if you just read yours out.
I prefer to talk to people rather than communicating in writing.
Okay, and how does that help you in your role?
Well, I think sometimes, rather than just write something down that's too complicated, or there may be nuances that I cannot put across in writing,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just easier to walk over to the person and sort out what needs sorting out, provided I'm not disturbing them.
And we all see that in depth. Yeah.
Sure.
Laura?
So mine said, I often step forward and take the initiative in a group.
Okay, and how does that help you in your role?
Because quite often I will be leading groups,
You need to do
and
that.
therefore sometimes things don't always go as planned, so I have to take initiative to be able to deal with those situations.
Yeah.
As well as
Yeah, we've seen that in
naturally
Laura.
enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and just noticing that the two of you have chosen
We are.
qualities next to each other, which in the Lumina model sits in extroversion. So this is actually a part of extroversion you've talked into. So we're now moving on to Sam. So what's your card say?
I enjoy being direct and to the point.
Great. So we've now moved into what we call outcome focused. How does that help you?
I find it helps me because it means that although I'm still quite new to the company, I don't feel afraid of hyping up
Yeah.
when I think I've got a point.
Have people seen that already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, you know,
Which
a lot of
one are you-
confidence. So you're standing in tough.
Tough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
The
can quite
ability
stand over there.
to actually say what needs to be said and be okay with maybe not everybody liking everything that you say. Yeah. Dan.
So I have practical. I'm realistic and practical by nature.
Yeah.
Um,
How
so
does that help you?
yeah, so I use a lot of kind of different pieces of software and have quite a few different responsibilities. And so I guess with the level of work, kind of the amount of work that's there, I do have to be realistic in my expectations of how much can be achieved in a short time.
Yeah.
And kind of get a hands-on grasp of what the different roles are because
Yeah.
they're very varied. So
Yeah. Keeping things in perspective.
yeah.
And this sits in the Lumina model onto down to earth. So it's that more grounded perspective.
Sure.
And the other Dan.
So I am most effective in one-to-one conversations.
All right. So how does that support you in your role?
I think it supports me in building trust. So I find that it's easier to understand a little bit about someone's motivations and needs on a one-to-one.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they're able to feel like I'm on their side as we
Yeah.
talk to others.
Yeah, so that's linking in with listening, being a good listener, and giving people attention. So Dan, does yours sit is it intimate? Or which one is
Intimate,
it?
yeah.
It's intimate, yeah, so that more connection with individuals will definitely help you with that. And this sits in the Lumina model in introversion, so different from what Deb and Laura spoke about. So you might notice that you're different in the team. Yeah, different styles of doing things, yeah. So this was looking at your strengths in terms of you've chosen a top strength for yourself. If you all played to those strengths, what would you say about this team? What would this team be really good at?
Talking in different ways.
Talking in different
We've got
ways.
Talking one-to-one, talking, picking up the phone or going to speak to people, being quite direct and to the point, practical,
Yeah.
and then me just
And you as you just have.
taking the lead
Yes.
to start the talking.
Yes.
As you've just seen.
As
Yes.
demonstrated.
Any other comments from over here about what the team would be good at?
I think it's fair to say that we'd probably be reasonably good at getting a task done, but I wonder if
In what way would the task get done if this was the main strengths that people play to? If they only play to this strength, in what way would they get them done?
well, I think with being tough, maybe a little bit assertive in your views and the ability to take charge, Dan's ability to be a bit more practical about the situation, I suspect that we'd be quite a good team if given direction to achieve something and to challenge that as we go.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah. So then we can talk a little bit about the more white areas, being aware that all you did here was just taking your top strengths. So it may very well well be that you could do all this, but if you just play to your top strengths, what would be some of the gaps in this team in terms of things that wouldn't get done so much, and what could be the impact of that?
I'm just wondering about whether the ideas would be there, and the inspiration, the big picture thinking.
Big picture. And what would be the challenge for a team if it didn't have so much big picture thinking? What could be the trouble in that?
Well, in developing resources, for example, we could be missing big opportunities
Yeah.
to create something new.
So
And
the
to be too fixated on what we already have.
I think there could also be the potential to miss chances on innovation. In terms of it's, for example, from my own perspective, it's great to be practical and grounded and kind of check the reality, but on the other side, there could be some brilliant opportunities that aren't always seen straight away by everyone, and not having someone to identify those opportunities could be something that's lacking for us.
yeah. So very much looking up at the inspiration driven, being flexible, the big picture thinking, actually getting something new. What about this area over here that again, we know that you may be in, but if you didn't step into that area, what would people focus? What would be the challenge of not having enough people focus?
We could, especially with my TAF and Debs' demonstrative and over here, we would especially struggle, maybe apart from down a little bit being intimate, we'd struggle to be quite empathetic to people.
So
You've got to remember the people that we're providing the stuff for
right.
Yeah.
as well.
So not only about newness, not only about
Yeah.
being flexible, but also
But
connecting with people. Yes, so that would be a challenge for the team. And you could even look at this area here potentially. I know you're in between, but if you just looked at discipline driven,
keeping on track,
keeping on track.
which we probably do by the conversations we've had. It sounds like
Sounds
sort of
like that this could be bridged.
Yeah.
It could be more that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's some of the potential risks for the team. But let's just look at the second cards just to see if some of those come out on your second card. So just do the same thing. Look at the back of the card, the actual quality, and just move to that quality now.
Where are you coming to?
You were really moved, and some of you didn't move so much. So let's hear a little bit more about that. So Debs, where were you before?
Before I was on demonstrative,
You were demonstrative.
and now I'm here on evidence-based.
Right. So what does the card say?
It says, my desire for precision and accuracy can become obsessive.
So the desire for precision sounds like a good thing. How can it hinder your performance to go into that obsessive thing?
Oh, I think what happens here is part of my role is proofreading, and so I do need to be obsessive about accuracy. However, that's only part of my role, and sometimes I take that obsession into other areas of my roles, so where it's not needed so much, and it can actually hinder me because sometimes I don't see the big picture.
Right. And there's everybody's like acknowledging. I think that can happen, and you're obviously acknowledging it yourself. So thank you for sharing that. Dan, what have you got?
So I'm now standing observing. My statement is people sometimes perceive me as detached and aloof.
Right. So is this some feedback you've had, or is it something that you just feel that might happen? And
I'd say self-aware feedback.
Okay.
Noticing when people can tell that I'm maybe coming across in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the risk here, Dan, if you go in to be more detached? What's the risk for your teamwork?
It makes me look completely disconnected, and that either I'm uninterested or unable to build rapport or understanding the person's needs, when perhaps I am, but I'm not showing that, I'm not communicating that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're actually is it because you're processing underneath?
Sure, yes. So
Yeah.
actually I'm often deep in thought,
Yeah.
potentially think about the situation they're
Yeah.
kind of describing to me, that
Yeah, but you're not
yeah.
communicating to them.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
what I'm
yeah.
doing. So they may see you just as detaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the strength beneath it is the fact that you're observing it.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
I'm also on observing. So I take time to think before speaking in a group.
Right. So again, that could be a strength.
Could be, yes.
Yes. How can it be overdone?
Well, I think ultimately it leads to me not saying something in a group, which could be at times I think frustrating, because I'm still thinking through
Right.
my version of how it applies before I say it, and then it doesn't get said.
Right. And the risk for you is that you leave
Yeah.
feeling that you.
A non-contributor.
Yeah. And maybe your views actually, I suppose, didn't get heard. So
Yeah.
I don't hear it. Yeah. Laura.
My desire to please others is sometimes so strong that I can find it hard to say no.
So what does that do in terms of hindering your performance?
It can cause me to probably take on too much, and possibly also my colleagues as well might experience that if I'm not being realistic in terms of what can be achieved.
Yeah. So for your colleagues, you can, is there some personal risk even about taking on too much?
Yes, I think it's I take on the personal responsibility, and then I may not do the task to the standard that I would like if I didn't take on as much. So I just have to be aware of that balancing act.
Not saying no. Yeah.
I use my gut feelings to make spontaneous decisions.
Right. Again, that sounds like a potential strength.
Yeah.
How can that hinder you?
Sometimes when I just decide I'm going to do something, I don't really plan it through properly, and you get halfway through it and then realise you've done something wrong, which means you have to start again or make big changes to it.
Right.
So I could save myself a bit of time by actually planning a bit more in advance.
Yeah. So what you've done here is you talked about the overextension of a quality. If you look across the other side to where you are, that's really what you're disconnecting it from in that moment. In that moment, you're losing a bit of touch with the other side. Entirely human to do, and what you're talking about is the risk of doing that because you lost touch with the other side. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to flip the mat and show you a little bit about what other people may see in you as you go into those overextensions. I'm going to do introversion, extroversion. So just being clear about this, so on the other side you're talking about a strength that you have that you sometimes overplay. So your intent is really about that strength. So in your case, Debs, it's about you want to be evidence-based, but it's just as you move into that extreme, it comes across as lost in detail, it gets too much.
Yes,
but it's
lost
still
in
good
details.
to hold on to what it was, and like I say, it's just in that moment you just lost touch with big picture thinking in that moment, but we can move in and out of these. The same with Dan, so it's detached and aloof, it really is underneath that sits a desire to observe and to take things in, but it may just be that you don't communicate and thereby people are like, hey, what's happened? So this is what other people may see in you. Any observations about that in terms of the language? Yeah, you can see it?
Yeah, this one, I think it's what other people could see, and also sometimes, if I was willing to admit it, what I also probably feel is that emotional stretch of wanting to deliver for people. Yeah. They may not see, if you're trying to keep composure, but just being aware that
internally
it could be.
Yeah. So really this is good for the rest of the team to know that you've all got these sides of yourself. It's good for you to know what triggers you, and later on today we'll be looking into triggers into overextension to see what you can actually do about it. So that's really the end of this first exercise, an introduction to the strengths you have, but also an introduction into strengths that can be overdone, which in Lumina Spark we call overextensions.